Class is now in session. I am Professor Hockey, and today we're discussing Game 46 of the regular season between the San Jose Sharks and the Dallas Stars, in which the Sharks have won 5-3. So the other day when the Sharks lost in disappointing fashion to the New Jersey Devils, I talked about how at the very least that game was pretty fun, pretty exciting to watch, and since the Sharks are likely going to lose the majority of their games as we go down the stretch here for the season, the latter half of the year, I was hoping that more of those games could be like that Devils loss, a close one that was fun to watch, compared to the game prior to that against the Edmonton Oilers, where the Sharks still did lose, but they lost by a score of 7-1, which was mostly unwatchable. And this game here tonight against the Dallas Stars seemed to be trending in the direction of another Edmonton Oilers situation. As we saw in this first period, the Sharks were getting heavily outplayed for the first half or so of it, and that includes a Dallas Stars goal to make it 1-0 from Dellandrea. But as the first period wore on, the Sharks did get some okay looks, nothing amazing, nothing goal-scoring worthy, and as such, the Sharks still found themselves down by 1 heading into the first intermission. In the second period, it starts off still Dallas tilted, and they managed to score a couple more goals to add to their lead from Robertson and from Faksa to make it 3-0 Dallas. And like I said, at this point, it seemed as though, here we go again, a 7-1 loss, a 7-0 loss here for the Sharks against one of the best teams in the entire league with the Dallas Stars. But the Sharks showed some fight here. The Sharks are one of the worst teams in the league when it comes to giving up leads. I believe they actually are the worst team when it comes to losing games in which they have led at a point. And it seems as though watching that happen time after time after time again this season has finally, taught the Sharks how to come back in these games, and they managed to do so from a 3-goal deficit. Very impressive. Laurent scores the first one, so a fourth line goal for the Sharks to make it 3-1. Then it is Nick Bonino. A pretty odd statistic about Nick Bonino. He went to the first quarter of this season, about 20-plus games, without as much as a single goal. Then suddenly he scored 4 goals in 4 straight games, so 1 goal in each of those games. Then he went another dozen or so games without a goal, and now he's sitting with 3 goals in his last 4 games. So certainly scoring in bunches when it comes to Nick Bonino, though I guess over the grand scheme of things, 7 goals in the over 41 games that he played is not particularly good, but it was contributing here tonight to make it 3-2 San Jose. And then the Sharks get a power play, and they spend the first 90 seconds, the first 75% of this power play just passing on the outside. Carlson to Barabanov to Meyer to Hurdle to Carlson to Barabanov to Hurdle to Meyer, over and over and over again, looking for the perfect shot. And you could tell that at the start of this, the crowd is hyped. The Sharks have just scored 2 goals. They're trying to catch up. But as it wore on with all of these passes, the crowd was starting to get antsy. They were starting to get impatient. But eventually, Meyer takes a sort of shot, and this comes towards the crease. It looks like it was tipped by Couture, but it actually hits off of a Stars player, so it ends up being Meyer's 26th of the season, and the Sharks tied this game up. Going into the third period, this is now a tie game, so a completely fresh slate. So the Sharks were going to have to come prepared. Like I said, they were going up against one of the best teams in the entire league this year with this Dallas Stars squad. And in the third period, the Sharks managed to score the go-ahead goal, their first lead of this game. It comes from Erik Karlsson, who else but him, with his 4-point night here tonight to make it 4-3, and then they managed to hold on to the lead, something they did not manage to do against the Devils a couple of days ago. They managed to hold on to it. They even get an empty netter from Logan Couture, and they finish this one off 5-3 in a thriller game. The Sharks got better as the game wore on, and it was definitely a fun one to watch, even if technically 2 points are not necessarily going to help the Sharks in their ultimate goal, or what should be their ultimate goal this year, of getting the best possible draft pick. On to the players to talk about. There was technically a line change here tonight, but not necessarily the one you may have been expecting, though I will get to that a bit later. Let's start off, first of all, with the first line of Meyer, Hurdle, and Eyssimont. I thought they started off slightly slow. That was kind of the general feel of much of the Sharks team, but as this game wore on, and especially in the third period, this first line really came alive. It felt as though literally every single shift in that third period period was not necessarily dominant from this first line, but was at the very least getting a chance. I thought Hertl in particular in the third period looked very, very good. Meier, as usual, also looks very good, and Eyssimont continues to be a very solid complement to these two players. We saw many games with Kevin Labanc on this top line, and credit to Kevin Labanc, it still worked out very, very well, but Eyssimont adds a certain different layer to this top line. Kevin Labanc was sort of a skilled guy who can find some empty areas to maybe benefit from a Timo Meier or a Tomas Hertl pass, while Eyssimont is more of a sort of forechecking, aggressive kind of guy who can maybe create some open space for players like Hertl and Meier. So that was definitely nice to see, and I was really impressed with Eysimont's play late in this game on this empty netter goal from Logan Couture. Eyssimont does not end up getting a point in this situation, but he makes a very hard play with his stick on the Dallas Stars defender, prevents him from being able to pick up this puck, which allows Couture to then score this empty netter. I thought originally, seeing it in real time, it was going to be a slashing play because he really did come down hard, but it was not a slash upon the replay that I saw, and it was just a very strong play from Eyssimont. So he's definitely been a real solid player for the San Jose Sharks. When it comes to their second line, I thought it was also rather impressive, not necessarily as, chance heavy as the Sharks' first line, but they certainly had some good looks. I thought Barabanov really had a very strong game here tonight. Couture also looked quite good. Nieto, a bit of the third wheel in this situation, but still an all-around solid game for the second line and an all-around real solid game for the top six of the Sharks in general, even though they have had these real holes in their top six, and you could say they still have these holes in their top six. The Sharks have actually made decent do with what they've had throughout this season, because really the major problem through 46 games has not necessarily been their top six scoring, their offense. It's mostly been the defensive and goaltending side of things, so that has at the very least been relatively impressive. When it comes to the third line, we had Bonino, Sturm, and Noah Gregor. So this is where that lineup change that I was talking about comes into play. Noah Gregor had stepped into the lineup in favor of Kevin Labanc against the New Jersey Devils and played so well in that game that David Quinn could not justify benching him after that one. And so I had made the comment at the end of that Devils game that it was going to be interesting to see what would happen with Labanc, because you wouldn't really be able to bench Gregor, and so you would probably have to bench someone on the fourth line if you wanted to bring Labanc back into the fold. But the fourth line, while they haven't been that great as of late, they had found decent chemistry in maybe the earlier parts of January and the later parts of December, and putting Labanc on a fourth line with like Gadjevich and Lorenz probably doesn't make a ton of sense. So in the end, because of this situation, Labanc actually doesn't get to draw back into the lineup. And now, while the Sharks were down 3-0, it seemed as though, okay, someone, Labanc is going to come back in place of somebody. With the fact that the Sharks made that comeback and ended up winning it 5-3, it again begs the question, who does Labanc actually replace in this lineup? I still think it could happen with Gadjevich or Lindblom and moving in onto the fourth line, but there's a very realistic possibility that Labanc is a healthy scratch for then a third straight game, which is pretty crazy because Labanc hasn't actually been all that bad this season. Labanc has in the past, over the past couple of seasons, been quite bad and been deserving of the healthy scratches he had gotten at times, but here this year, on that fourth line, on that first line especially, he actually had some pretty solid games. So it's kind of an awkward situation to say the least. But moving on to the actual third line here tonight, I thought Gregor, while not creating as many chances as he did against the New Jersey Devils, he still certainly was good for his couple, had a decent chance for himself, which was saved by Ottinger. I believe that was in the second period. But a player who I do want to talk about on this third line is actually Nick Bonino. Now, usually when I talk about Nick Bonino, it is completely trashing him as a player here in the lineup for the San Jose Sharks, but he did actually have a pretty solid game here tonight. Scores a goal, obviously the one that made it 3-2, but also had a very nice assist on the Erik Karlsson goal that was the go-ahead and eventual game winner in this game, and also a couple of slick defensive plays on that side of the ice as well, which is something that I haven't been able to say about Nick Bonino all that much this season. So credit where credit is due, he played decently solid. When it comes to the fourth line here of Lorenz, Gadjovich, and Lindblom, obviously they did manage to grab a goal for themselves. Lorenz was the goal scorer there. Generally, this fourth line actually had a couple of okay chances. Gadjovich, I believe, had a breakaway off of a very nice pass from, I think it was Asimont, so that was something. And there was a couple of other okay chances in the offensive zone, but this line did still play a decent amount in the defensive zone, and Lorenz does have the sort of candidate for the worst play ever in San Jose Sharks history. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but it was very, very weird. The Sharks are defending in their own zone. Lorenz on the right side just completely abandons his post to just skate immediately. He like books it to the left side of the ice, leaving the right side completely wide open, and I believe it is Esa Lindell who ends up getting a great chance on Reimer, who has to make a great save. So I have no idea what was going through Lorenz's head on that play, but that certainly didn't reflect super well onto him. He does make it up with that goal, like I said, but still. And so the forwards generally played rather solid for San Jose, but what of the defense? Well, of course, leading the way was Erik Karlsson with yet another 4-point night. It's pretty crazy that we can even say yet another 4-point night when it comes to a player, because 4 points is very difficult to achieve. Most players who play in the NHL never even have a single 4-point game, and Karlsson has done it multiple times thus far this season, including here tonight, a goal and 3 assists. I will say, compared to other 4-point and even 5-point nights that he had this season, the points that he actually did get were not necessarily the most impressive. The empty netter was an assist that, was an okay pass to Couture, but nothing amazing. The Bonino one, or not the Bonino one, the Meyer one was also a very simple pass. So generally, these weren't outstanding plays, but when Karlsson was on the ice, the Sharks were controlling the pace of the game, and the goal that Karlsson did score, while the assists weren't super impressive, the goal was amazing, an absolutely perfect shot. It completely beat Ottinger, who thought he had that side of the net covered as he was sliding across, but Karlsson just picks a corner that didn't even seem to exist in that situation. So an incredibly amazing goal. And now he sits at 62 points on the season. That is tied for 4th in the entire league with Nikita Kucherov. No other defenseman in the league has even hit the 50-point mark yet, and Karlsson has already hit and surpassed the 60-point mark at this point. Yes, I know Erik Karlsson's defensive game leaves a lot to be desired. He is not very good at that section of the game, but his offense is just so overwhelmingly amazing and so much better than, at least this season, than second place on the list, that it would be very hard pressed to not, at this point, give him that Norris Trophy. But I do want to also now talk about the goaltender for the San Jose Sharks, James Reimer, who, like the Sharks in general, had a pretty rough start to this game. This Dellandrea goal was one he definitely would have wanted to have back, and you could see the frustration, even on just the first goal of the game. You could see the frustration in James Reimer as he let that one in, because he knew he should have had that, and he knows that over the past few games that he has played, over the past couple of months, really, Reimer has not really played all that well, so it must be frustrating to have that situation, especially compared to last season with the Sharks, where Reimer actually was very reliable. And so he ended up bouncing back after that first goal given up. He didn't really have any chance on the Faxa one. There was technically a chance on the Robertson one, but I won't blame him too much. And then it was lights out the rest of the way. A great game for James Reimer. Yes, obviously the offense comes back. Very impressive 3-goal comeback to bring it back to make it 4-3. But it doesn't happen without James Reimer shutting the door after that third goal. So credit to him for sure. But that will do it for this review. The Sharks will be back in action on Saturday for their first of many straight road games here. They'll go up against the Columbus Blue Jackets, one of the few teams in the entire league who actually find themselves below San Jose in the standings. So while it was fun and games to watch the Sharks beat the Dallas Stars and go competitive with the New Jersey Devils, it is technically in their best interest to try and lose, or at the very least, not necessarily try and lose, because we know that's never going to happen, but to lose this next game against Columbus if they want to improve their standings. Class dismissed.